I'm just so honored that this guy is here all the way from San Antonio. You know, a few years after my first Retail Patriot event, he was my speaker. And, you know, it's so typical of our veterans. When you ask them to do something, you know, they'll find a way to get it done. And I needed a speaker, and Colonel Denney was my speaker there. I don't know, what was that, San Francisco? I forget where that one was. We've done a few together now. And this being the 60th speaker session, I wanted it to be unique. I wanted it to be special. A day I won't forget, just like October 19th, 2009. So friends, let me introduce to you my buddy, Colonel Marshall, call sign Hooker, Denney.
Oh, he's too kind. Hey, nice job, color guard. Nice job, you guys. It always cracks me up when Paul says, hey, I didn't serve, but I know you did. Tell me your story. Because Paul's been serving every day. I've known him since 2009. And the story you've built now, serving since then. Look where F.I.S.H is today from when I met you at the first Retail Patriots event. And by the way, what I liked about that Patriots retail event was he pit industry against each other to try to donate more than the other. It was like, yes, that's a Marine mentality. So I guess a couple things to clear up first is, you know, the call sign, right? Everybody's like, you know, it's 2023, you can't have that. And now I'm in industry, so it's especially challenging there. So I always have to start out with, yeah, it's the tail hook on the airplane, not the lifestyle. So some people buy it, some don't. And if you want more than that, you gotta give me more scotch. So what I'll do is, I can't take the straight path, right? That's a frontal assault, those always fail. I got a flank here, and I'm gonna tell you a story I hope you get a takeaway from, but I'm not gonna take a straight path to get there. So bear with my ADHD a little bit, okay? So, those are polls? Okay, so, he said I'm San Antonio. The other thing I gotta do is make sure all y'all understand how I talk now. Okay, so if I say, you know, it's you, and then you all, we're talking you all, two of you, and then all y'all, right? So if that slips out, that's what that is. And if you need me to go back and decode that, let me know. So my story kind of starts with, I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force, a career Air Force guy. He was avionics guy on B-52s. So for the old Air Force guys, that when there was a SAC, Strategic Air Command, he was a SAC guy. So we lived in lovely places like Minot, North Dakota, which is why I live in Texas now, because I learned to not like the cold. But so I grew up a military brat. We moved a lot. We moved to foreign countries. And so a lot of that shapes how I do friendships today, which is another odd piece with Paul, because I'm somewhat of an introvert. I'm a situational extrovert, right? And I learned to just make new friends when we moved. I had a hard time carrying deep old friends, so I just made new ones. And then I joined the military, and then that just continued, right? But then in the military, something different happens. I mean, when you start getting shot at together, when people around you start dying, your friendships change a little bit. So I wish I had that kind of mentality earlier in life, so that when I look back at high school, college, I go, oh yeah, that friend, and we still, I couldn't even hardly come up with names now. It is. So some of what I want to talk about is a path that my experiences led me on that hopefully either will help you or you'll have had the same thing, and you'll, oh, look at you, and you'll share that as well with other folks, okay? So, because we all have, my story's not unique. I mean, there's people out here, you can't tell by looking at somebody's face or what they're wearing where they've been, what they've seen, what they've done, right? So this is just a splash of the units I've been in, and why I say you kind of like make new friends when you go to new places. So I went to flight school from University of Kentucky. I was in Air Force ROTC because my dad was in the Air Force. I went to the student center one day to eat a cheeseburger, and there was a Marine armor officer who was there recruiting for officers called the OSO, Officer Selection Officer. And so he had a booth, and I went over to talk to him. And about 15 seconds after talking to that guy, I went, uh-oh, I think I signed up for the wrong service. And then how am I going to tell my dad? So then Uncle Sam takes over. Marine Corps says, we'll pick you up if the Air Force will release you. Air Force says, we'll release you if the Marine Corps picks you up. So I was caught in that little infinite do loop for a little while. Finally got that sorted out, and I ship off. I go do the Marine Corps. I do flight school. My first experience with loss of people I know. And it happened a few times. It happened in academics. Somebody I didn't know, but he was part of our class. He committed suicide. And it's not because the academics were hard. He was a Naval Academy grad. That's a rigorous school to get through. I won't admit that any more publicly than in this, by the way. But that was the first, wow, this is a little bit real. Then I went to T-34 Charlie's. That's a turboprop airplane. Nothing really significant happened there, right? I went to Pensacola for the academics. Whiting Field, which is just north of Pensacola, is where I flew that. Then I got selected for jets and asked to go to Kingsville. You could go to Kingsville, Beeville, Texas, Kingsville's in Texas, or Meridian, Mississippi. So I chose Kingsville. From there, it was a T2C Buckeye. And then that's intermediate jets. After T2s were A4s, that's advanced jets. Both the T2s and A4s, you have to do carrier qualifications to advance to the next stage. So T2s, we had an instructor pilot who had graduated, gotten his wings, and then they had a program called SurGrad, where once they got their wings, they stayed and instructed for a year, then they went to their unit. Sometimes that was just to keep the units from backlogging and having a new pilot sit there waiting to learn to fly their new plane. So he was flying the airplane with a student, well, he was in the front, student was in the back with a hood doing instruments, and it was going to be an instrument takeoff. And so this airplane, you have to have both wing tanks full, or you get asymmetry and it'll roll once you lift off the ground. They did not check, and one of the tanks was empty. So once the airplane took off and the student's got a hood over just flying instruments, doesn't quite catch that roll fast enough, the instructor ejects them. The student got one swing in the chute, and the instructor skipped across the ground, lived long enough for his mom to come and say goodbye. So serious business, really. We had one of these. No instructor's crazy enough to go with a student to the ship. So they get you ready to go, and then you go by yourself. There's no instructor in the plane when you go to the ship to qualify. We had one go to the ship, and he got low and slow, and the people that help on the ground, called LSOs, landing signals officers, were telling him to add power so that he could climb and get around. There was a mechanical function in the throttle quadrant. You couldn't do it. And the airplane departed over the top of the carrier and crashed into the tower, killed 5 people, including the pilot, and then injured 19. One of those killed was actually a contractor, a DynCorp contractor. So there's ways that people serve, and not just in uniform, right? We got government civilians, we got contractors that continue to serve. So one of those fatalities was actually a contractor. I'm like not even 2 years into flight school, this has happened. So I was at the carrier in the T2 finished then that guy crashed so that's how close those events were together. Today, all of these jets are replaced by the T-45 and then this middle one's replaced by, it calls it a T6, Texan. So all this stuff is scraps in Arizona somewhere now. So I'm getting up there. This is what I wound up being assigned. So while I was in flight school, my call sign was Swamp. My first name is Marshall, Marsh, Swamp. Pretty creative, isn't it? Well, then I got to this thing, and then all kinds of, like my very first flight in the fleet, we called it the fleet, we had an emergency, we had to take some arresting gear, and the airplane was really light, and they were backing us up, and the airplane drove up on the hook and broke the hook in half. So the way I met my commanding officer for the first time was when he came out to the runway to look at what I did to his airplane. So that was one thing. And then we went to Norway about a month after I think I was with the unit, and then a big snowstorm came through. All you could see were little bumps in the snow where the taxiway lights were. So we had to take this old Norwegian arresting gear to safely recover. And I mean, it was like a series of things like that. And at our first session where we create call signs, I became hooker. So not the lifestyle. By the way, so what is the Prowler? Electronic warfare, jams radars. So we try to send bombers and strike aircraft in to attack targets, right? And they're going to have they're going to have surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft artillery, guided by radars and all that, right? This thing tries to get in first, jam to blind the radars, so the strikers can get in and not get shot down. And then it's got, you saw the one shot. There's missiles where if there's a radar radiating, we can shoot a missile at it, and it homes in on that radiation. So pretty cool stuff. It's retired now. So why is this picture in here? So marine aviation, the 3 C's: look cool, sound cool, be cool, right? So that's my picture for the 3 C's. And so I said, hey, if I'm going to do that, let's take that and poke the balloon and not waste a missile on it, right? So I thought it was a brilliant, and that's when I got command of a squadron, they put your name on there. That's like this big, so my idea is to just puncture that balloon with the refueling probe. But then somebody said, nah, that'll happen to you. So this was the only time I think I was really scared in the airplane. Because even at the ship, first time you go to a ship and it's that big in the water, and I got to land on that, but you're so busy following the you don't even think about it. You're just like procedure, procedure, procedure. This, we were egressing out. We were doing the Serbia stuff, Kosovo, Serbia, and we were egressing, which is where you normally get hit. And it was loud boom, and the instruments are going nuts because they're driven off air probes. A lot of them are. So we thought we were like, and we were constantly getting shot at out there with AAA and sometimes SAMs. So we thought we were hit. That's me with less gray hair. So we thought we got hit, and so we're trying to figure out, but you can't see this. It was pitch-ass dark. Sorry about that word. You know, there's all kinds of flares going off. It's just really, it messes with your brain. And so we're trying to figure out what's going on. And Dave Overton, the guy in the back, the old man of the crew, says, hey, raise your seat up and look over and see if you can see the radome. And so I raised up the seat, and I'm shining a flashlight, and nope. So he figured it out just by being back there, calm, cool, collected. So who are these guys? They're electronic countermeasures officers. So I fly the thing. They're the ones looking at the radars and jamming and adjusting jammers and all that. So that was the only time I really got, you know. Okay, so then following aviation, you know, when you fly, typically the next set of orders is go to school. We're constantly going to school, constantly going to training, right? So I went to Naval War College, College of Command and Staff as a major, and then as a lieutenant colonel, I went to National War College in Washington, D.C. That's where this is. And this fine lady here, Ann Pham, is the daughter of a South Vietnamese officer who fled South Vietnam upon the fall and took his family. She was a baby. And she is a U.S. State Department Foreign Service officer. So somebody that was on a boat is eating a piece of Marine Corps birthday cake at the National War College in Washington, D.C. That's just amazing. What country can somebody do that in other than this one, right? So very impressive. Brilliant. Hard to have a conversation because she was like always talking way up here, and I wanted to, kill people, break things for a living, and that's not her job, right? So it was always and she's my cube mate at the school. So she shaped a little bit of how I started thinking about things. No kidding. And that's what the brilliance of what the military does with those schools. They pair you up with people that you wouldn't think would go together, and it changes. I'm sure I influenced her in some ways, and then she certainly did me. So that's why I bring up an iceberg, right? Because before I started talking, here's what you saw. And then when I started telling you about, man, I was like barely a year into flight school and all these fatalities. I thought I got hit, in the airplane. It scared the crap out of me. I met Ann Pham. That's what this is. So I think too many people think this is the negative space. I don't think it's the negative space. I just think it's the stuff you don't see. And I've seen some of this come up here through efforts like Paul Chapa and F.I.S.H, where he's actually made a difference in somebody that was treating this as negative space and either stopped treating it as negative space or allowed somebody to see it up here. And so a lot of what I'm talking about over the course of my career, being a military brat, the way we moved, the way I grew up, the schools I went to, all are this. Not necessarily negative, but if you don't know me, you don't know how this shapes how I am today, right? So that's why organizations like F.I.S.H to me are invaluable. So we're going to talk about that again. All right, so I'm going to try to one of my tours was at the Joint Electronic Warfare Center, and I had a coworker. She had a son who's a Marine, Lance Corporal, infantry. I had a son, Lance Corporal, who was in signals intelligence. We each had pictures of our sons on our desks. We used to laugh that they're out in the field carrying weapons, taking care of our protections, and they can't keep their rooms clean. And then at work, it was at Lackland Air Force Base in a skiff. So normally you don't see people there that you don't see a lot because it's a skiff, a secure facility. And the Marine Corps came in. And you just know when they come in what's going on. So her son was killed in Afghanistan. My son came home from Iraq. Her son was hit in a Humvee. Hit in a Humvee with 4 other people. And when we went to Dover, and the questions, she was, by the way, a retired Army major intel, and then she was a GS 15 at the government civilian 15. That's a senior rank at our job. So I took her to Dover. We flew to Dover together. You would think going to Dover to pick up the remains of a fallen, you just kind of think maybe it's a it's an organization full of doctors or like, I don't know what we were expecting, to be honest with you. But it was an E5 and an E4 who, this is one example, a Humvee with 5 people in it. They had to separate the remains to figure out where they go. A sergeant and a corporal. And the questions she had, those were hard for anybody, let alone a sergeant and a corporal. So we flew back to San Antonio, and it was one of those small, I can't remember what they call them. It basically can carry a couple coffins. It's a small jet. So we were in that. We land and put the casket in the hearse. And as soon as we come around, for as far as your eyes can see, there were people lined up on both sides of the road. That is the bottom of an iceberg, right? So Alice Babine, her son was Travis, and we were friends at work, and we both had Marine sons, and we became lifelong friends after that. Don't worry, I'm going to lighten it up. So what is this? What does this have to do with what we just heard? This is my attempt to lighten it up a little bit. So, anybody know what this is? But who are these guys? Yep. So that Navajo code talkers, right? Wind talkers. So when I was the commanding officer at an aviation training group in Corpus Christi, I had to try to figure out a way, because of my own experiences in flight school and what I saw, how do we impart upon young new officers some of the ways that people come together in hard times and can come through with the camaraderie these guys do. And we actually found one of the remaining code talkers, Samuel Sandoval, and he came in and he spoke to the group of flight students, mostly lieutenants, signed autographs, great stories, right? I'm not going to repeat them here because we don't have time, but you can imagine the stories that he had, how they formed, what they did, how they know they made a difference, right? And that's really what it is. It's, do you know you're making a difference? So that's what that picture's for. That was very changing. So who's this? I'm at flight school I'm the commanding officer of the Marines going through there. And so we had a flight student graduating one night, Michael Latinsky, first lieutenant. And so when you get your wings, it's a big deal. I mean, it's a party, parents are there, significant others, friends from school. It's huge because it takes a lot to earn your wings. And so his family was up there, and to see him get his wings, and that night is when they were notified that their other son, his younger brother, stepped on a pressure plate and was in critical condition. Newlywed, that's Heather, that's his newlywed wife. So at the same time that family is on this high of having a son make it through flight school, they're now wondering, is this one going to survive? And he's in Germany undergoing multiple surgeries. He lost 3 limbs. So things that shape that bottom part of the iceberg, right? There he is getting the Purple Heart from the Assistant Commandant Marine Corps, General Dumpert. But look who that is. So guess who I called? When that happened to Mark Latinsky, guess who I called? Yeah, and Paul Chapa. Yep. And so Paul talks to that family today. And this is back in 2012 or 11 or something. 10, thank you. So that's why I put this up here, because if somebody doesn't have a fish, if there's not a Paul, who do I call? Is there somebody? Maybe I would find somebody else. But that's what I mean about sometimes you can take that dark part of below and get it up, right? We had some great, so General Davis, a very big advocate for fish, for Paul, for the Marine Corps. He was the Deputy Commandant for Aviation for the Marine Corps. And my orders after the Marine Corps flight training was to U.S. Cyber Command, where he was the deputy commander. So he dragged me out to become a cyber guy. So keeping it light, bringing that lower up to what you can see. Remember who that is? It's Heather, right? Those are my two daughters, and that's back then, right? They're that little. But that's Mark, and he doesn't care he's missing lint, and they don't care. They're not old enough to develop those kinds of perceptions, right? There's no below the iceberg for them yet, right? So this is at the event, and there's Mark. Heather wasn't looking, so he started dancing. Marines. And you know who that guy is? And those are my two daughters. My two daughters got on an airplane the very first time in their lives by themselves and flew here to stay with Leslie and Paul. That's how I feel about them. And that's how they feel about them. My oldest wanted to come. We just couldn't make it work out this time. And then obviously Leslie and Gabby, their daughter, and our two. So I'm just trying to impart upon you that, you know, some of that stuff that we've had to deal with, because I've got more for you. I got to choke through one more part. This is good though. So those are my two daughters. We're on the USS Lexington. It is now a museum in Corpus Christi Bay, right? And my wife says, "You guys know Daddy took off and landed from this carrier." And without even skipping a beat, they said, "Why would you do that from a museum?" So that's the hero I am to them. All right, here's another hard part coming up. So this is my son. I'm on my way to an air show. I'm flying in the air show. And so, right, that's him, Marshal 2, Marshal 3, Marshal 4. And that's him in Iraq, graduating boot camp, good friend. His call sign's Cowboy because he rode bulls. And I told him, that's what stunted your growth. And if he's listening to this, sorry. So this is the change of command for that aviation tour I had. And so you can see the collection of friends that come to these things, and where Paul, I haven't served, but I know you, yeah, you do, Paul. I'll get him to quit saying that. Okay, so this, Colonel retired Pete Perkins, Vietnam vet, was written up for a Bronze Star decades ago. And it's hard to believe, but the military lost the records. I know it's hard to believe. So somebody found him, and he was awarded, and Hondo Fox, actually, we invited him down and had Hondo Fox do it for us. So he finally was recognized for service in Vietnam. And he's handing my wife the Yellow Rose of Texas as a commanding officer's wife. But you know how they say no ex-Marines? Have you all heard that before? No such thing as an ex-Marine. So I have to hybrid this. She's not an ex-wife, she's a former wife. I'll try to keep it light. Hey, that's a special lady. I'll tell you why. That is my friend for life, because she was on the phone with our daughter-in-law while the EMTs were trying to resuscitate our son. That's Alice Fabine, who lost Travis. So, I mean, would you ever have thought, before I walked up here, all of this stuff I've been laying out for you? Right? And I don't walk around talking about it, but the effort is to talk about it in this case, because I want people to see F.I.S.H as a way to help, right? So, never thought. So I was a senior Marine in this greater San Antonio area, and I used to have to do funerals and on behalf of a grateful nation. It was pretty hard every time. In this case, it's for my daughter-in-law. So, in this picture, that's the back of my grape. This is my former wife, who's now lost a stepson. Alice Fabine, who lost a son, and this is the wife of one of our coworkers who lost a son. All together in one funeral, and you would never know talking or looking. You don't know, right? So, out of these mothers, that's the Gold Star mother. So, how do I manage that? Because I have them. I have them. Those are my babies, right? So you got to find something. You can't go crawl in a corner. You got to find something. What am I going to do? So, whatever it is. But when Chappas embraced the friendship with the girls, and the girls were growing up and handling that below the waterline stuff, they're growing up the way I want them to. And by the way, I'm completely broke, because this one's into horses. So I'll do the best I can on donations, but I'm hemorrhaging money. So, hey, look, this was a popular Marine Corps marketing deal. You had to go through the crucible. You had to earn the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, right? It was like they gave it to you while you came out of the field, nasty, dirty, muddy, smelly, hurting, and that's what really set into your brain, right? And here it says, for those who understand, no explanation is necessary. For those who don't understand, no explanation is possible. So if I went back to those other pictures of Mark Latinsky and Travis Fabine and others, you can't if you haven't been there, right? But you can participate in trying to help make that space underneath not be dark, okay? So that, when I said I want to try to get to some message but not take a straight path, come back to the path, and I'm a Marine, I visualize, I do crayons and cartoons. This makes sense to me. This makes sense. I can think about when I'm listening to somebody and not overreact or not, react too quickly, and think about what's below what I'm seeing and hearing right now. And I'm in the corporate world now. It's true there too. It's true there too. It's true in life, right? So I retire, and they give me a bag for golf clubs. This is me, right? So I haul a daughter to rodeos every weekend practically. That's what I do. I don't do golf. So hopefully it was hard to get through some of that, but hopefully you get the continuity of the message, and that now, as people are potentially transitioning out of the military for their next chapter, what's available. I'm in the corporate world. There are programs for interns for people that are in the military, already have security clearances, and we do what's called upskilling, where if somebody's they were in artillery but they want to go into IT, there's programs you can do that, and then do an internship with a corporation like mine, right? There's one called SkillBridge. The government continues to pay your final 6 months, continues to pay your salary, continues to give you your benefits. You work for the company doesn't pay you, you're getting paid by the government. So whatever organization that company supporting, military organization, is benefiting from that as well. And then you get to try each other out. If you don't like the company, you don't have to stay. And if the company likes you, you're likely to get an offer to stay. So there's a lot of stuff out there that people just don't know that hangs out below that water line. It's that iceberg under the water line, and we got to get it up over the top, right? So there's some companies that are trying to get that out there, but I think the more we talk about this stuff and how we communicate what opportunities there are, then I think we'll be doing better service for people as they transition out of the military. And then I know Paul's like, he wears horns when he goes and deals with the VA. So I think that's it. Time for questions, Paul? Absolutely. Oh, and you know what? Are we running long? Do you want me to read this?
Fine. Oh, yes, please read.
You want me to read that? Okay. So, sorry, I meant to do this as the last thing. So I'm going to try. You might have to bail me out. Okay, I'm going to read you something from, in fact, I'm going to put the picture up just so you can see as I'm talking. Okay. I'm reading you what Heather wrote. From the time Mark was little, he wanted to be in the military. After learning of the different branches, of course, only the best would do, the Marine Corps. That's a good Marine Corps wife right there. Mark was always the kind of person that left an impression on others. He was very athletic, knowing no fear in his activities of snowboarding, rollerblading, biking, and enjoying every sport from volleyball, soccer, hockey, and football. He has a very big heart, always given to his friends, family, and perfect strangers. He saved enough money from his high school job to send his mother on a cruise. He was the first to run out the door and shovel the driveways of neighbors who were older or less able. Mark won me over with his charisma, humor, and huge heart. My father is physically disabled, now deceased, but at the time physically disabled with multiple sclerosis, and my brother is mentally delayed. Mark was a huge asset to my family by helping my dad physically and being there to shovel or mow. My dad was eager from the start to call Mark his son. Mark has been the brother that my own brother never had. He takes him out to do shopping and out for activities and guys' nights. That's how you get call signs, I think. We had a lot of dreams and hopes for the future. Mark had hoped and worked hard to aspire to be able to care for me and for our parents as well, especially my disabled father. After 2 years of dating, we began the chapter of our life involving the U.S. Marine Corps. We were married a couple years into it, and after less than a year of living at Camp Pendleton, California, he was deployed with 3-5 to Sangin, Afghanistan. After only 7 weeks and thinking that I had many months ahead before we would be reunited, I received a devastating visit on Friday, November 19th, while I was at work. I knew right away from their uniforms that they were more than customers, but that Mark was alive. They came with my mother and sister who were there when they had stopped by our home first. I nearly fell apart when I learned of the initial report of his injuries. I knew my husband and his strength and determination. Although I was told he was in critical condition and warned if these gentlemen returned on a visit, it would be only under conditions of him passing. I knew it was not going to happen. I looked at the chaplain in the eye, and if you knew Heather, you can almost hear it. I looked the chaplain in the eye and said, "I'll not be seeing you again." It was not said out of anger, but only out of the surety that I felt. Mark's unit was sent on a patrol mission to an area that no military had been. They followed one another with a sweeper in front to pick up on IEDs, improved explosive devices. Following him is a point man to keep a lookout for the enemy. Mark volunteered that day to be the point man. The pressure plates that are stepped on are fairly small. It has happened before that they are missed by one and stepped on by another. Mark remembers a great deal from the feeling of somersaulting to the thoughts going through his head. His friends wasted no time, and despite the high possibility of secondary IEDs placed, they ran to his aid. I was told Mark never screamed or cried, only begged to find their way to a satellite phone to call me and tell me that Mark was going to be fine. They went back to his gear and pulled a wallet-sized laminated photo of me that Mark always kept on him. They placed it in his shirt pocket and told him to hang on to me and make it back to me. Remember, he's missing 3 limbs at this point. He's got 1 arm. And he's got an arm now after surgeries. It was not functional at the time. This was recovered from his clothing and sent back all the way to the U.S. with him. Mark admits that God had a lot to do with it, but that right away, he decided he was not going to die. He immediately lost his 2 legs above the knee and the left arm below the elbow, or at the elbow. They were able to salvage his right arm, which he now has full use of. The things they do now with prosthetics and absolutely no cost to us is such a blessing. Mark will be able to get back to life and the things he once enjoyed. And let me just take a break here and say, I'm convinced one of the reasons that this young, she might have been 23, she's a nurse. And so the ability to manage those wounds, I'm sure that helped. Mark knocked the socks off of the typical stay and made it to the U.S. by the 23rd. Remember, he was there the 19th. It was such a relief to us both to be with one another. I've been at his side since and have been a witness to his strength and God's miracles. He has the heart of a volunteer and has volunteered and sacrificed more than anyone can know. He's shown so much strength, grace, and his own spirit through this long and painful recovery. Everyone told me when this first happened how they ached and grieved for us and how sorry they were. Marcus embraced this with his chin up and ready to learn how to get back to living. He's recounted the events that led up to the blast and what happened after. He believes this was meant to happen to him and only wishes to see the rest of his brothers home safe. So remember, his brother was in my unit, and so the first thing we did was try to find out what does he need. And what he wanted was stuff for his unit. And we were able to do that. We rallied a couple different nonprofits, and we got stuff out there. We have an overwhelming response of thanks and cheers and people granting his wish. This experience has opened our eyes to the good of people of this great country. Mark used to say, "My pleasure," when thanked for service. Now he says that with a stronger conviction. Written by his loving and devoted wife.
Yeah, I just say a couple more things about the Latinskys. All right, so we met at one of your balls, right? And Mark and Heather were there, and this kid talked about, he wanted to be a game warden. When he got out of the Corps, he wanted to be a game warden. And I'll never be able to be a game warden now. And that's when we got the idea of, hey, because we had seen one of those track chairs right there. And we did a fundraiser, and Mark got the first track chair ever. And they moved up to northern Minnesota. They're out just outside Duluth. And Heather wrote a letter one time saying that, Mark just loves this thing. I mean, it's awesome to go walking, and we're blazing new trails. He now has a snowplow. He's had a snowplow for a long time, and he plows people's yards and driveways and all kinds of stuff. And the resiliency of this young man is just ridiculous. And like you said, having Heather as a nurse, man, there's something about nurses are so special. Right, honey? She's a nurse. I need all the help I get. But they were told they'd never have children, ever have children. And their son Wyatt will be 5 in September, and they have another little kid on the way. How stinking cool is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
This one made a Christmas wish list, and on the list was for the Latinskys to have a baby.